everyone, and after some technical difficulties, I am back for another video on the Celtica Region, my fan-made Pokemon region inspired by Germany. In this video, I'm gonna go over some trOpe Pokemon you can find here. For those unaware, in almost every Pokemon generation, there's been a consistency of Pokemon filling certain trOpes. Many of these are simply animals like regional dogs, and fish, as well as some more specific ones. For example, the first route in just about every mainline Pokemon game has a 3-stage bug type, starting as a larva, then a pupa slash cocoon slash whatever you want to call it, then a 2-stage canine of some sort, a 2-stage normal type rodent, and a 2 to 3-stage bird. Now, not every generation follows these rules. For example, Gens 2, 4, and 9 do not have a 3-stage bug type family. But if you want to see my take on these Route 1 tropes, I already have a video on that, so instead let's go over some other ones. So, how about pretty much an exact opposite of one we previously said? Instead of a dog, let's make a cat. So, in order to even make a fake one, we need a concept. So, cats are nocturnal, right? So we could have our little kitty have something to do with the night sky, which is pitch black. You know what else is pitch black? Black cats. And we could combine it with how black cats are seen as bad luck, and I think we have a concept. Let's get to work. So when you're starting to make a Pokemon, the first thing you want to take in consideration is the overall shape or proportions of what you're trying to draw. For this one, I'm going for a small, cuddly, cute, kind of almost stuffed animal kind of feeling because of the kind of chunky legs and the more fluffy face. Of course I'll go over more in detail right about now. Say hello to Medo, a psychic type. Medo usually keep to themselves, hardly ever being seen around other Pokemon, much less people. It is said that they can stare at the ball on their tail for hours on end for no apparent reason. Its name comes from medium, or someone who can communicate with ghosts, and meow. Its whiskers resemble stars and are based on the same yokai that inspired real-life Pokemon like Espeon and Meowstic, but it also holds a crystal ball, a common trope for wizards, fortune tellers, and the like. The starry sky is also a reference to reading the stars, a common way to receive a prophecy. Now, let's evolve our kitty cat. Again, the most important part of starting a Pokemon is getting the right proportions. This one, very similar to Meow, I wanted it to be kind of like cuddly, fluffy, but it's definitely much more slender, taller, and has an overall creepier, more ethereal, almost kind of vibe. Yeah, just giving it kind of night sky, black cat kind of colors, so yeah, kind of all ties it together. Here is Orcat, a psychic and ghost type. This Pokemon evolves when media reaches its breaking point. They seem to be able to communicate with those beyond, but actively tries to avoid them. Nobody knows why. Its name comes from Oracle and Cat, and is inspired by a psychic who has become so obsessed with their work, becoming essentially a slave to it, draining its soul, hence the hollow eyes and the ghosts bound to it, or perhaps escaping from it. These spirits also reference transcendence, or apologies if I butchered that name, a near unreachable state of peace. Perhaps Orcat was attempting to achieve transcendence, but lost itself along the way. Back to the black cat inspiration, since black cats are usually seen as bad luck, or a curse, it also ties in with the witch inspiration, hence its ears resembling a witch's hat. And since cats are usually seen as the evil counterpart to dogs, it makes sense for Orcat to be the supervillain to my dog Figmon, Hundan, that I explained in the Route 1 video, explaining its supervillainy looking color scheme. Speaking of Pokemon introduced in a previous episode, if you watched my last video about the first bit of Celticia's story, you might remember Notot, the signature Pokemon of Aria, the normal type gym leader. I said I would show off its evolutions in a future episode, and guess what? Here we are! If you haven't seen that video, Notot is a little music guy, but I didn't really elaborate much on it. So here I am to explain the rest of the evolutions. Gotta draw them first, though. Now, this Pokemon was actually fairly difficult to redesign, because I say redesign, because I actually drew it out on paper multiple times, and none of it seemed quite right. I mean, I knew the basic idea, which I'm gonna explain on in a minute, but I don't know, just it never really sat well with me. Here is Operis song, of a normal and ghost type. Operis song cries when it loses a loved one, completely unaware that their very song is what killed them. When it swings its arms in a hypnotic motion, the purple souls cry out with a sound not unlike a bell. Its name comes from opera, parish song, as in the move, and apparition, mentioning its ghost type. If notot resembles a single or eighth note, then Operis song is a beam note, and its head is a very stylized quarter rest note, as well as the lines going down the body, a reference to the lines on a sheet of music. Its ghost typing is a reference to how people will sing with their soul, the phantom of the opera, the trope of little kids singing creepily in the dead of night. It's expanded upon even more when it evolves. Speaking of evolving, here is Orrin, a normal ghost type. Their mysterious songs have many different effects, from giving or taking strength to even mind control. For an unknown reason, people who are not used to having an Orrin around will have an uncontrollable sense of gloom when they're near. From opera, song, and siren. It takes the 8th note inspiration from Operis song and takes it a step further, making it a 16th note. Its name references sirens, one of the many inspirations for this mon. Oh, and if it weren't obvious, the trope this line represents is the interesting trope of humanoid, specifically feminine humanoids. Seriously, why is this a thing? Every generation has one except for like the first two. Anyways, like mentioned before, it takes inspiration from the siren, a mythical being that resembled a human with a fishtail instead of legs. So, basically a mermaid who will use their beautiful voices to lure in and often kill sailors on the sea. Its very light feel and souls on the arms looking like wings brings in another inspiration, classical depictions of angels, whom were often seen singing, especially when Jesus returns to Earth. They're also spirits, tying the ghost type back. Its hair also looks like the wigs that composers would wear, also tying it back to Germany, which, might I remind you, is home of the Ludwig von Beethoven, the world's most famous composer of all time. The thing on its chest also looks like a cravat that composers wear, a word that I most certainly did not have to look up. Yet another trope that has remained fairly consistent is the rock monster trope. You know, your golems, Gigalus, Knacklestack, etc. Let's jump into the design, and then I'll tell you the inspiration. Alright, this guy is simple. He is real simple. I mean, really, he's just a little rock guy. Little rock guy with a couple of little rock horns. Yeah, super tiny guy. He's got gems on his eyes, which was an interesting thing that I thought would make him look more rocky, I guess. And the only thing that makes him really stand out is the horns. Here is Peblo, a rock type. These Pokemon live together in large packs. They have an intense aura that multiplies quickly in larger groups. Apparently, they glow under a black light. Its name comes from Pebble, blue, one of its main colors, and love, as it's based on a crystal heart, hence the shape. It's also based on German Hauenyi? I don't know how to pronounce that. A crystal used mainly for protection, giving it both an explanation for its blue colors and its heart shape, since crystal hearts are one of the most common ways to carry around crystals. Anyways, let's evolve it. Alright, so, gonna be honest, straightforward here. Its evolution is just a bigger guy. More rocks, bigger guy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, he's got funny arms now. Funny arms to walk around. Yeah. It had a beta design that I think I like a little bit more, but this one fits the color scheme a bit more. Anyways, meet Stumblelove, a rock type. These Pokemon care deeply about their family. They wander the mazes of caves they call home for weeks searching for food, all the while knowing the way home. Its name comes from, obviously, Stumble, as referenced in the Dex entry, and again, Love, referenced in its Dex as it cares deeply about its family. Also, wow, look, he has an actual body now. This is a theme with a lot of the little rock guys usually only having one pair of arms and a pair of feet, sometimes neither, but gaining an actual body upon evolving into the second stage. I've also always loved the idea of a creature walking around on its arms instead of its legs, and I've even made a few scrap designs of older Pokemon. Now let's evolve Stumblelove one last time. Again, this Pokemon is really just, it's bigger. It's bigger, the arms are a little bit more detailed, and the limbs are all detached. It'll make sense later. Yeah, it's mostly just giving it rougher edges, a more serious look. Yeah, it's like I said before, these parts are hard. No script, if you can't tell. Yeah. Besides, I don't think anyone even watches these bits, so, who cares? Here is Shoulov, a rock and psychic type. Shoulov's arms are tough alone, but when combined with its powerful aura and its care for others, has made it even harder than diamonds. It takes pity on smaller Pokemon, clamping its arms together to make an indestructible shelter for them. Its name, just like the rest of its line, comes from Love, but now it has Schutz, German for protector, something that this Pokemon definitely is. Like I said before, German still don't know how to pronounce that, is a protective crystal, so I took that a bit literally and made the rocks on Stumblelove's arms into an actual stereotypical shields that it uses to protect its trainer. Its psychic type comes from how the lines get their magical, mystical powers that people say crystals have are just that, magic. And I opted for psychic over fairy because these rocky guys are usually found pretty early on, and having a fairy type that early in the game seems a bit too overpowered. Oh, I almost forgot about their shinies. They're really simple, just becoming pink because, well, pink hearts, but I personally think it looks really nice. Well, will you put any of these Pokemon on your Celtia team? Maybe you like the eerily silent Orcat, or perhaps you prefer the more majestic or Orrin. Or would you rather have the loyal, protective Shoulov on your team? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, goodbye and stay safe.